Yeah, hey, this is Chad with the Cage Rage Podcast, and I like to fart. This is the Cage Rage Podcast! Yeah!
I'm Miguel, the archivist at the International Brotherhood of Prize Fighters. I'm glad to join you here at the Cage Rage Podcast.
Today we're talking boxing. In fact, we're talking about what is some believe to be the greatest recent heavyweight fight in history, or at least in recent history. Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury named after, of course, Iron Mike Tyson, and Deontay Wilder, the Bomb Squad. These two giants are prepared to face off this weekend, December 1st, or is it December 8th? What is it this weekend? December 3rd.
December 1st.
December 1st. December 1st. Whatever it is. Yeah, well, this weekend, Saturday on Showtime. And it looks, by all intents and purposes, to be, for whatever it's worth, a great show. There are a lot of minutiae that we're going to go over today that are going to make this a great show. And it's a complicated fight between your slugger versus your technical fighter. A couple things that make this really interesting on top of that is that, number one, two of the people that are in this mix have beat Klitschko, one of them being the guy that's going to fight Wilder, Tyson Fury, and another one named Joshua. Now, Joshua and Fury both fought Klitschko. They both defeated him. Fury defeated Klitschko easily. Joshua defeated Klitschko after going down and then finally finished Klitschko in the 11th round in a comeback, hurrah, Superman kind of way. Fury, after defeating Klitschko, fell off the wagon, kind of fell off the earth, suffers from depression, bipolar disorder, etc. Grew up as what's known as a traveler. His moniker is the Gypsy King. And the reason they call him the Gypsy King is because he comes from northern Britain, which is kind of tied into these people called what they consider gypsies, and they call themselves travelers, and they live in trailers, I guess, if I'm getting that right. I don't know another way to say that. And they're very luxurious and designed. And if you've ever seen the movie Snatch, that kind of gives you an idea of it. And that is actually a reality of how a sect of these people still do live to this day. Tyson grew up in a mobile home. And by mobile home, I don't mean a trailer. I mean he grew up in a mobile home, an RV. He is one of, I believe, 8 brothers. He was born 1 pound, extremely premature. They didn't even know that he would live. And his dad said, well, he was a wee little shit, and we didn't know if he'd make anything, so he was a squirt of piss, so we kept him and see what we could make of him. So from all of that comes the heavyweight champion of the world, who defeats the undefeatable Klitschko, and in so doing falls off the face of the planet, undefeated still to this day, gives up his belt, walks away from it, gains 200 pounds, and then decides he's going to come back and fight Deontay Wilder, who is an undefeated fighter, who has knocked out 38, I believe, of his opponents. I think he's 40-0 now, if I'm not wrong. Miguel's going to correct me on about 90% of this stuff, because I'll have it half wrong. And then from there, we have pretty much the making of the greatest heavyweight championship fight in recent years. Deontay Wilder comes from Toluca, Alabama. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, my apologies to those Alabamans who are going to scream and yell at me and say it's Tallahassee or Toluca or whatever it is. But Deontay is very flashy man, wears a lot of gold and sequins and that kind of stuff. And every time you turn around, he yells out, "Bomb Squad!" And I honestly, I don't know, have any idea what that means, but it has something to do with him throwing haymakers and knocking people out. You can make a lot of arguments about Deontay, his style. People pick on whether or not he's a real boxer, this and that. He's the bronze bomber because he won a bronze medal in the Olympics. So you got to give the guy a lot of credit. And at some point, people had to start saying, okay, he's 40-0. Something's got to be right about him. He's got to be doing something right no matter what. So that's the background on it. So I'm going to let the real expert here take it away and tell us the real story on all of this. Miguel, what's what?
Well, thanks a lot, Chad. It's, as you mentioned, it's an interesting fight. You got to keep in mind that the last decade of the heavyweight division, before the last, it's been 3 years now with the rise of Joshua and stuff like that. But before that, the last decade or so, the beginning of 2000 till now, was dominated by Klitschko. That's a European title holder. And, the heavyweight title really didn't impact on the American market much at all.
Hey, Miguel, can I butt in real quickly?
Yeah.
Can you point out to the audience why that put so much of a damper on the heavyweight division with Klitschko being involved in that and his twin? And can you go through that real quickly? Because he has a twin and who was also a heavyweight champion.
You have to keep in mind where they're coming from, right? They're coming. The Klitschkos are starting to rise. They both, were amateurs with expansive backgrounds. Vitaly, who's Vladimir's brother, many thought Vitaly was the better of the two, but Vitaly actually didn't participate in the Olympics because of steroids. That's really the only official flag on them in their steroids in their career, but it's an interesting little asterisk into the Olympics. So there, Wladimir won the gold medal, obviously. And, he turns pro, and he meets Lennox Lewis. And Vitaly meets Lennox Lewis. So these fights, Lennox Lewis is the dominant heavyweight there. And then when Lewis backs out and retires, you've got the rise of the Klitschkos. Now, what the rise of the Klitschkos meant is that they're going to have more European opponents, that they were based out of Germany, not based on this. Every once in a while, they'd come over to the United States to fight. And in the United States, they, at the time, the heavyweights that were there stepped up and gave it a shot with them. A couple of them, floored, Chris Bird floored Wladimir, and took the belt, so it's a situation where even then, Chris Bird wasn't like a super huge star afterwards. And then in many cases, the Klitschkos got their belts back and they did everything they were supposed to do. So the rise of the Klitschkos came after Lennox Lewis. And then from there, it was like you were sort of devoid of real competition for them.
Hey, Miguel.
Not real competition, but, you had the two top spots on lock in the heavyweight division.
Hey,
so,
listen, I know that this is a little bit off topic, but doesn't that fit in mysteriously well that Bird and Fury fought really the same type of fights? They were great big guys who fought more like lightweights. They didn't have a tremendous amount of power, and they were the kind of guys who beat Klitschko. Not only beat him, but dominated him and took his belt. So it's kind of an odd thing there, a comparison that I wasn't even aware of until you just said that. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, what you got to look at there is Bird got Klitschko early, and Tyson got Klitschko late because nobody could do anything to him in the in-between time, right?
Yeah.
So you got to give the guy credit. Klitschko, a Hall of Famer, probably a top 10 all-time heavyweight.
Definitely.
A huge punch, a guy with over 50 knockouts on his career. So we're talking Wladimir. So, from there comes the legacy of the heavyweights now, and it's Tyson Fury that took that legacy. He's the first guy to beat Klitschko. So whatever it is, he gave up the belts. Joshua kind of stepped in, and Joshua really benefited from the Klitschko fight because obviously he won, so he gets some of the shine and some of the credit. And the fact is that was a highlight reel type fight. You know, it was
Yes.
probably Klitschko's most memorable fight as well. You know, especially from
Yeah.
perspective of the American public, right? So,
Incredible fight.
you know, you got to look at that because the Tyson Fury fight was definitely more of a strategic win where you can't say Fury didn't win the fight, but you know both guys could take pictures afterwards. You know what I mean? There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of face, you know, not a lot of contact in that one. You know what I mean? So he won the belt, but that's where Fury, you know, I think is a little bit off on his take. He definitely beat Klitschko, right? But the bottom line is they were signed for a rematch, and that rematch was a very interesting rematch. And you always get something when you do it again. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Fury was definitely in a position as a younger guy in his career, coming up off the biggest win of his life. The sport was asking him to do it again. He didn't handle it well. You know, he kind of chafed at it a little bit. So there's a balance there. You know, he did do the unexpected first. He kind of did it ugly. He won ugly.
Okay.
And then that took a little bit of his credit away. And then when Joshua won big, it kind of balanced it out a little bit. But I think at the end, the lineal champion was beat by Fury.
Okay. So to clarify, if Fury had taken the rematch and if Fury had not self-destructed, then he would have fought Klitschko again. Had he beat Klitschko again, then he would have fought Joshua at that point, correct?
No,
I mean, more than likely, or
no. That trajectory would be set if the wheels hadn't come off of Tyson Fury's career. Tyson Fury would have been forced to fight the Klitschko rematch. So
yes.
if he loses that, you're back into you get Joshua Klitschko. You get Klitschko would have still been in the mix.
But if not, then Joshua would have fought Fury.
No, I think Eddie Hearn and Joshua's people would have kept on their track, which means 3 to 4 more fights at a lower level before they go for a championship. I think they rushed him when they got a chance at Klitschko and the vacant belts again.
So they wanted the Klitschko fight simply because they wanted the notoriety, but Fury didn't hold that notoriety.
Yeah, no. The thing is Fury loses the belts. The belts are there. It's the belts that are attractive.
No, but
there's a shot. There's a shot at the belts on a fast track, and that's what they did. They took advantage of the opportunity that became of them. They wouldn't have faced Fury right off the bat. They would have let Fury fight any number of opponents, just like Joshua's fought. Fury could have fought Eric Molina. Fury could have fought all those dudes that Joshua's been fighting with title defenses, as mandatories and stuff. Povetkin, any one of those could have been Fury fights as he defended the belt, you know. So if Fury had won and kept the belts and beaten Klitschko a second time, you know, you'd be talking about a guy who might be 30-0 at this point and probably being talked about as a dangerous heavyweight on an all-time list because, you know, especially with 2 wins over Klitschko. But Fury didn't do that.
Yeah, so. But what I'm saying is this. So you're saying that had Fury kept his act together and fought Klitschko, that Joshua would not have taken the fight with Fury next, though, which I find strange because you're saying because he did fight Klitschko next for the vacated belt and then won the belt, right? So why wouldn't he have fought Fury for the belt next? Is there something that they fear about Fury that they didn't fear about Klitschko? Or was it that they said, look, we can't turn down a big money payday and a big name recognition payday of fighting Wladimir Klitschko, and who cares about Fury, kind of a chubby, unathletic, bald, traveling gypsy guy, for whatever that's worth. Which I love the guy. I think he speaks great. He sort of has this elegant swagger about him that's a little lower dialect that is almost Tyson McGregor like in its own way. I think it's kind of cool. I enjoy listening to him. There's a realness to him. There's a fresh realness. It It doesn't feel pressured. It doesn't feel pushed at all. And I think they can make a star out of him if they would just allow him to be himself. But do you understand what I'm saying about that?
Yeah, but here's the way it works, okay?
So does that have to do with promoters and managers then?
Klitschko loses to Fury. Fury gives up the belts. Actually, the first organization that stripped him was the IBF. The IBF put together a world title fight between Charles Martin and I believe Arthur Spilka or someone along those lines. Charles Martin won it. And then Charles Martin, with being the IBF world champion, went to England, fought Joshua, and Joshua grabbed the belt off a guy who was really a mediocre champion who'd grabbed a vacant belt.
Yeah.
So that's his first step into the world title picture.
Yeah.
Now, from there, he makes a couple of title defenses, as I mentioned, of just the IBF belt.
Yes.
And then a couple of the other vacant belts, the WBA belt and stuff like that, come to fruition in the Klitschko fight. So he'd gotten the 3 or 4 fights that I was talking about before, so he would have taken those 3 or 4 fights before a Fury fight as well. They wouldn't have been title fights, but because Fury would have had the belts up, but he would not have rushed in, just like he didn't rush into the Klitschko fight. He took Klitschko on, made Klitschko come to England, had gotten big enough that he could manage that fight his way, make the call, have his promoter be the guy, etc., etc. Now Klitschko was definitely in a spot he wasn't always in. He wasn't the A side, and Klitschko's always been the A side for the last decade, right? So he definitely waited to get the circumstances around that fight. He wouldn't have fought Fury right away.
Excellent.
So now when Fury comes back, takes 2 fights, and then steps into the Deontay Wilder fight, and I think Fury thinks he can beat him. This week, they've had, the fighters are in Los Angeles, and there was the press conference on Thursday where they got in each other's face and the expected things. You see the personalities of the guys. I think Fury's the more, comical of the two. I think
Yeah.
with Deontay, you're getting a little bit of a script where he's going to be the bombastic, loud guy. I think that makes him kind of have Teflon too. That he doesn't really respond to like the trash talk from Fury. So Fury was left, kind of ducking and weaving, even in the press conference. So I think that makes it an interesting fight. They're both undefeated. You got Wilder 40-0, 27-0. That makes it a bigger heavyweight fight than most of what we've gotten. We haven't had undefeated heavyweights. It's the WBC belt on the line. One of the belts is on the line there. So Joshua holds the others, and Joshua awaits the winner.
You just said something that's really important. We have 2 undefeated fighters, heavyweights, with a lot of knockouts on their belts. And that is enormous. Fighting for championships, and they both have, although they've got some pretty questionable opponents early on and coming up. You've got Olympics in there, so you have a lot of different aspects that give them credibility. Although even the credibility could be questionable if you want to really break that down. In the end, when you add it all up on paper, it really does look good as far as a heavyweight fight. And we haven't seen anything like that in a really long time in the heavyweight division. And that's why this is so huge. And so tell me this. Why isn't this on the front page? Why isn't this Tyson in Holyfield? Why isn't this, why isn't this Riddick Bowe? And not Riddick Bowe, Michael Moore and George Foreman. Why isn't this something like that? Why doesn't this have that massive draw and that appeal? What are we missing?
The American market has really been weak with heavyweights for the last.
Is it MMA?
15 years. MMA's a little bit responsible for that as well. But Wilder really hasn't captured the American audience like to the point where he's a media star yet. And
I don't understand why.
I think he wants that, but I don't know that boxing's really and the premier boxing champions, the Al Haymans of the world and stuff.
How's my sound?
That they're positioned to really have a megastar like that. I don't think they built a megastar. I think they got a lot of a stable of great fighters, but I don't think they've got a crossover guy that really puts a blip on TMZ. You know what I mean? Wilder should be that guy, but I think they took this fight. They made it in Los Angeles. That makes it neutral territory. The odds have Wilder about a minus 170, minus 180 favorite. I don't even know if that's correct because it's going to be neutral territory over there. I predict Fury will have some people traveling with him. There's going to be a crowd there. Los Angeles is new territory for Wilder. Not a lot of heavyweight pedigree over there, I mean, Chris Ariola's a heavyweight. I think he's on the card as well. Chris Ariola's a heavyweight from out there, but they fought, but I mean, that's not impactful in terms of tickets, really. So, they're trying new things. They're trying to make it a big fight, but basically it's a neutral territory. And then you talked a little bit about their backgrounds, and Wilder is an Olympian with a bronze medal, and that usually indicates a deep amateur background. In Wilder's case, it's not the case. He's an athlete that kind of got through to the Olympics with very few amateur fights. To the point in being that, Fury, in his background that you went into pretty good there, he's been around the fight game since he was a wee tot, as they say. You know what I mean? Since he was a kid. So I don't even know that Fury doesn't have the more deep background in fighting and in overall in what we're doing here. You know what I mean?
I think that's I think that's a given.
Yeah, and I think if the American public sleeps on that and feels that that's not important, then then you've got your odds and you can pick on Wilder and stuff like that. But I think this fight's kind of right up Fury's alley. A guy that has been about the same boxer for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 times we've seen him out, looking to land the big punch. I don't want to belittle what what Wilder has, because with Mark Breland in his corner and stuff, you're talking about Hall of Fame level talent backing him up and teaching him and stuff. So they have their way of managing people into getting on the end of that one big punch too, So it is going to be interesting there, but I think if you think that Wilder's going to dictate everything in this one, I don't know that that's going to be the case. It's going to be something where I think Fury's going to have to move like he did with Klitschko, and we're going to see if, being on the north side of 30 and having visited the north side of 400 pounds, both those things could affect your fleetness of foot,
So, so let me throw you a scenario, and you tell me what you think of this scenario, and then you throw one back at me and tell me what the right scenario is. But I'm going to throw you a scenario on what I think is going to maybe happen. Okay, so I think this fight goes I think this fight goes at least 8 rounds, or the distance. It either goes 8 rounds or it goes the distance. So, and here's why. I think Fury wins the fight either way. And here's how I think he does it. I think he does it with, sorry about that. I think he does it with footwork, because if you watch Fury, he's got this really weird footwork that people aren't used to seeing, especially with a guy that big. He does this thing with his feet. Excuse me. Sorry about my voice, guys. It's shot today. I've had a long week of no sleep. Fury has this thing with his feet where he sort of steps with his back foot, and so he's got his left foot forward, and he steps with his back. He steps with his right foot back further, and then kind of almost steps this way, and then when he does it, he steps over his left foot, which you're never supposed to cross feet, obviously, and then slides his left foot back to get in, and then comes back this way. And I've seen him do that several different times, and he does that on a jab. And what he basically does is he nullifies someone who works off of their jab. And what's Deontay Wilder do? He works off of his jab, right? And he's got a great jab. I mean, that's really his weapon. He's got that big, long jab, He uses that left jab, and then he throws a straight right. And as soon as he gets you hurt, he starts throwing haymakers. And with a guy like Fury, when you throw haymakers at him, he's going to tie you up. And he's so big and he's so long that he's going to tie you up and lay on you. And I don't think Wilder's going to know what to do with that. And I believe he's going to tire himself out trying to get out of the octopus's arms, as it were. And Fury's just going to lay all over him and be a wet blanket on him. And he's going to get him tired from doing that. And even if Fury catches him and even hurts him 3 or 4 times early on in the fight, which I think could happen, but I don't think he knocks him out. So unless Wilder knocks Fury out early on, which I don't think happens, because I don't think that he can set up on his jab fast enough with the way that Fury moves his feet to be able to finish him, because Fury will tie Wilder up and wet blanket him and hold all over him and do the same thing he did with Klitschko, where he climbs on his back. And he lost a point for rabbit punches and stuff like that on Klitschko even. And they threatened to take another point. And at one point they said the only possibility of him losing to Klitschko was if they took another point for rabbit punching or whatever it was at one point in the commentary. So to cut this short, basically what I'm saying is 8th or 9th round, I believe that Wilder could be so tired that Fury might be able to just drop him simply by going out there and pop, 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 in a Chris Bird sort of fashion, where he's not hitting him with that much power. He's just so tired that he can't stand up anymore and he kind of falls down. That, or he beats him up for 12 rounds and that's the end of it. He just simply outboxes him. That's my scenario. Tell me what you think of that. Am I completely off my rocker? Again, look, I'm a host. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm an idiot. Miguel's an expert. He knows exactly what he's talking about. I train in MMA, but that doesn't mean anything. I love boxing. I love MMA. I love fights, but I don't know that much about it. I just love to watch it. I'm here to host and learn. So tell me where I'm off. Why am I wrong?
No, I think it's a very good. I think it's a very good scenario. I think it definitely could play out that way. I don't think it plays out with a Fury knockout of Wilder. I think Wilder kind of guts it through, even if he's hurt. I think I think if he's hurt and down and has to get up, he'll manage to get to the end of the rounds and stuff like that. I don't think he gets put away. So I would.
You're saying Fury? You're saying Fury is hurt or Wilder?
If Wilder's hurt and dropped, I think he gets up and can manage himself to the end of the round. I don't think he's going to be facing a hyper-aggressive Fury looking for a finish.
Agreed.
I don't think that's Fury's style. So, but I don't see a finish happening that way. But I think you're right. I think one scenario that is unlikely to happen is somebody gets stopped here in the first 3 rounds or so. Could it happen? I mean,
and say why not. Tell me why not, because that's been Wilder's thing. So why doesn't Wilder finish him early?
Because I think he's facing a guy who understands what boxing's about, and he's going to have to chip away. You know, he's not going to land that big punch. You know, if he gets to land his big punch early, it's usually because the other guy's made a mistake or wasn't ready, or, you know, to a certain level. I don't think he's going to be facing any of those. Maybe Fury will be rusty still and make a mistake, or be a step slower than he expected himself to be. That's I think the big, like I said, Fury, it's been 3 years since he fought. He is now north of 30, and he has visited north of 400 pounds. Those are important numbers, I think.
So you were saying that what we were looking at was he makes it through the first couple of rounds, maybe even gets off the canvas or something like that, but probably not.
Yeah.
You don't see Fury hitting the canvas. Why not? Why didn't Fury hit the canvas?
So nobody's going down the first couple of rounds, I don't think. I mean, Wilder may headhunt early. I think Fury will stay, when he's fresh, he'll stay out of trouble early. If he gets hit,
how does he do that?
He'll redouble the effort. So I don't think we're looking at an early knockout or anything definitive in the early rounds.
Okay, how does Fury avoid that super big straight right, that uppercut, that looping right? How does he develop? How does he avoid the bombastic bomb squad thing?
Look, I think Fury's got one goal in the fight, and this is where I think Fury takes it to a superior level. Only when you got your boxing craft down can you think about other things. And I think Fury's main goal is to frustrate Wilder. That's what he's got to do early. So I think early on he's on his bicycle and moving and not giving Wilder a set target the way you mentioned his footwork and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, there are things even you don't have to be a boxing craftsman to see that there are things where Fury's improved greatly in the last few years. In the early days he was a big kind of awkward goofball and stuff, but he's put all that together. I noticed it one time, and it's in a goofy spot, but you notice it. It was a video of him training with his family and stuff, and I think young Fury's there, who's like a 22-year-old heavyweight, and his cousin Huey's there, who's like about a 6'4", 6'5" heavyweight. A couple other cousins. There's a girl in the video and stuff. And Fury is being Fury, his personality and stuff like that. And they put on music, and we've seen Fury lip syncing and singing Aerosmith in the ring and stuff like that. But they put on music. It's kind of like a dance type of music, and everybody starts to dance. And there's 6 or 7 of them just dancing and getting loose and stuff like that. But it's clear that the best dancer is Tyson Fury. And, for you to say that about a room full of anybody, and the guy 6'9", has been working on his footwork in one way. And then I fall back on Vasyl Lomachenko, who's the probably number 1 pound-for-pound guy, in the top 2, definitely, right? But, his father took him out of boxing and put him in ballet for a long time.
That is interesting.
Something about being nimble and having footwork that's very important that Tyson Fury has captured, like no heavyweight really since freaking Muhammad Ali. I mean,
wow.
That's and I mean, I'm not putting him on Ali's level, but the movement is heading in that direction as opposed to the plodding heavyweights that have to throw bombs and start chipping away at basically a brick shithouse that sits in front of him, and it's just he brings a different aspect to the boxing game.
Absolutely.
So I think he's on his bike early. I think he's on his bike and throwing punches. Hit Wilder, not get hit. Hit Wilder, not get hit. Talk to him a little bit. Let him know, hey, this isn't going your way, is it, buddy? We're not in Alabama anymore.
Hey, you missed me that lad. Hey, baby, you got me now. Oh, hey, you almost hit me. You getting frustrated yet?
Comes in throwing straight punches, and Fury gives him, just like in the press conference. You know what I mean? I think Fury's on his bicycle and frustrated. I think the goal is to frustrate Wilder. Once he's a little bit more tired, then you can implement whatever it is you think is going to win you in the judges, which may still be being on your bicycle. It may be tying him up more. It still is avoid the big shot. You can't get hit. And you got to go in there and get hit. The more Wilder comes in throwing the bomb, the more he's susceptible to pop, 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 and back out. And, hey, who scored that on the judges, So I think I'm going to pick Fury to win as well. I see a decision going his way. I think that's not a safe bet, because I think if you're going to leave it to the judges, and we're talking about boxing judges, we're talking about boxing judges that haven't judged the heavyweight boxing.
And we're in California?
In California. I mean, I don't even know what's going on. Andy Foster's the commissioner over there, who's a former MMA fighter.
Same people that did Chuck Hole and Cheeto.
Yeah, and so you wonder about some things over there, but in general, Andy's a guy who's going to probably have the interests of the fighters in the right spot, and we don't really have that kind of problem with this fight, right? But I do worry about, the ins and outs of who the judges are, where the judges are going to look at it, what the judges are going to give credit for in this fight, because that's going to tell all, because what if Fury is able to run, hide, hit, and basically win every round for every observer, but he gets planted and sat on his ass around round 9, and then Wilder chases him the rest of it and starts banking all those rounds. All of a sudden, you're starting to even out the fight, Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting fight to see from the perspective of there's a lot at stake. It's the heavyweight championship. Wilder's carrying kind of the nation of the state. The United States hasn't reacted to Wilder like we should, but at the end of the day, this is our heavyweight, right? We're Americans. we should kind of be rooting for him,
Right.
black or white or anything like that. We should kind of be rooting for him. If you're going to be racist about it, then okay, the black people can root for the black guy, the white people can root for the white guy. That's kind of like boxing. It's a sport where you can break down that way. It makes it a big fight, huge fight from all those perspectives.
I don't think that. Goddamn, I hope anyway. I don't think in the U.S. that the U.S. is going to vote for a British guy because he's white. I think they're going to vote for the American, not the white guy over the black guy. I think that. Goddamn, I hope so. Personally, I hope they vote for the guy that they like the best, regardless of nationality or anything. But whatever on that. Let's not get into it. But, okay, so we've got all of that accomplished. We've got one more thing to talk about before we wrap this up then. So, and we'll definitely get deeper into this on the post-fight analysis that we're going to do next week. But, so here's what happens next. Somebody wins this fight. We think Fury. We both agree on that. But whatever happens, and here's one more question before I get to that. Who does the media and boxing in general want to win this fight? Because I know what I believe. Who do you think?
That's an easy one. The fight that wants to be set, Anthony Joshua said it himself. He said, I need Deontay Wilder to win this fight.
Right.
Fury is going to be the outlaw and the odd man out. Hopefully, if Fury wins, he gets the cash in because he would deserve it based on just performance. But I think what happens there is that we get to sit and watch these fights marinate, hopefully not Pacquiao Mayweather style where they just do it in 8 years, But I think that, you're going to be looking at a couple years before you see that deal come together for that fight. It has a lot to do with promoters, Warren and Hearn. And, they've worked together before. They'll do it with the right money. The right money will be there for this fight. They'll get it done. But they're going to twist it. There's going to be some testicular twistings on this one.
Some testicular manipulation. Right. Okay, so, I agree. As far as the media is concerned and as far as boxing is, they need Wilder to do this because if Wilder does this, then he cements himself as a bona fide champion, and they can start to sell him. And then they do the Joshua fight, which is what we need to talk about now. Because the obvious incumbent is that someone has to fight the winner of this, and it's got to be Joshua. So Joshua's just standing there. He'll be in the audience. There's a good possibility they'll put him in the ring afterwards, to say, or maybe he stands beside the ring, or they interview him after the fight or whatever. I'm not sure how that'll go down. It just kind of depends. But that's a thing now where they put him back in the ring again, and that started to happen again. Used to not, that kind of quit happening in boxing for a long time. I don't know why. But then MMA started to do it again, and now you're seeing it in boxing again a little bit. I think it's a questionable move as far as class. I still like it regardless, but I don't know that it's the best thing for boxing, but it's the best thing for the media and for sales, which means it's the best thing for boxing ultimately, because if you don't sell tickets, you don't have boxing, and you might as well just do it in the gym. Okay, so having said that, what happens? What's the follow-up to this?
I think you're right. I think the world awaits the winner to fight Joshua, and if something else happens, it'll be a shame. I think if Fury wins, I think you'll see that we'll be put to wait at least a year or two before that fight happens. But I think Wilder and Joshua, I think that fight. Here's the interesting part of it to me too. Wilder wins. Wilder goes to England, or they do the fight in Las Vegas and monetize it as much as possible. It's a huge fight, and it's, again, undefeated champion against undefeated champion.
You think that they do that fight in England instead of Vegas if Wilder wins?
I think Anthony Joshua decides.
Huh.
I don't know if you want. I don't know if you don't save your Vegas debut for a mandatory, where you come in and you fight an average guy, not the biggest challenge you've got. Anthony Joshua will decide where that fighter, he'll negotiate wherever he wants. But I think that you've got the two possibilities being one of the soccer stadiums in England or Las Vegas. Those are the two possibilities. That's a huge mega fight. But if Wilder were to win, I don't know that. What happens with Fury versus Joshua is it does take on an all British affair kind of feel, and it'll have a lot less interest in the United States just because.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. But I'm not sure for monetizing purposes that Fury versus Joshua, an all British rivalry with that market, where that market is the premier market in boxing right now, where they won't.
Man, they might kill on that.
Forget the soccer stadiums. Go and find a field, and just put a ring in the middle of it and let the people come.
And
you know what I mean?
Do it old school, like the picture behind your head.
Yeah, not even older school than that. The way they used to do it in England is the British champion Daniel Mendoza, 1790s bare knuckle champion, is rumored to have gotten into a fight with a guy on his way to his fight. So it's like he was in traffic, got pissed, and fought a guy while he was heading to his fight. So like that type of stuff where you're heading out to the country because there's nowhere else you can hold the fight. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think you're right.
So, and I think Fury with the what he represents, and I'm not an expert on this, but Fury and Joshua represent different walks of life in the British.
Absolutely.
The milieu of British culture, right? So
you've got a kind of a Cockney gypsy across the tracks versus a polished, Cambridge.
Brit, who at the end of the day is an immigrant as well. So at the end, I mean, just not to be. There's no real racism. It's facts.
Joshua is an immigrant.
He's from Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
And,
but I mean,
so
he
cool.
speaks with a British accent and.
Oh no, he's lived his whole life in London.
Okay.
I mean, in Nigeria they speak English, with their own accent and stuff like that. But no. Joshua's British through and through. But I point out that he's also an immigrant. So it's a nice story. He's a great story.
Yeah.
But Fury comes from a different walk of life where if he was born a pound, his father actually thought, I'm going to leave this little shit outside. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know that doesn't make for a much bigger fight than Wilder just for what it is in England.
Man,
so
I want to do the documentary on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the first chapter gets written this Saturday, December 1st. We find out who Anthony Joshua's next opponent's going to be at the Staples Center, and at Showtime. If you're in England, BT Sport will be showing it. So tune in. I'm not sure how they're going to do the time difference there in England. Maybe the fight will be on early in the States in the afternoon so they can show it over there. Or if not, you guys are going to be getting up around 6 or 7 in the morning to catch that fight. But well worth it. You got Wilder and Fury for the WBC World title.
Hey, I want to point out, we'd like to thank the International Brotherhood of Prize Fighters. Got it. TheSweetScience.com. TheBoxingChannel.com. NoPity.com. That's a clothing line that we are starting to bring back. TheCageRagePodcast.com. Catch us on the Cage Rage Podcast on YouTube. That's the easiest way to find us right now. We're exploring new avenues. We're trying to figure out the best way to do that. Subscribe below. Hit the little red button right down there and subscribe. They're starting to really pick up now, and people are starting to know who we are. We're starting to get a lot of information that are telling us, hey, we love the show. We're hoping that this is going to be the one that puts us over the edge and we really start to take off. Once we go viral, you guys are going to be able to say, hey, we knew you guys when, and we used to be able to talk to you and say all this good stuff. We are working on a massive compilation of tapes, fights, all kinds of good stuff that we had from over the years from the 90s through, God, I don't know, 8 years ago when I stopped taping it, that we are going to be putting on our YouTube channel as well and on the cageragepodcast.com that you'll be able to get with your subscription. So subscribe now before we start charging, because once we get it all on there, then you'll have to pay for it. So if you subscribe now, you get in cheap if you're a cheap ass, which I am, so I would subscribe now if I were you. Hey, Miguel, thanks. Anything you want to put on there before we wrap it up?
That always, good time talking about boxing. Wilder and Fury is a fight that is worth everybody's attention. Drag a friend who's not into boxing down to see it with you. It's a couple of days away here. You probably will hear this podcast after it. But it's got our predictions, and we'll definitely do a post-fight. And I just want to let Chad know that we have finished another podcast with no pants on.
I have no pants on, and my balls are fresh and clean because I'm wearing ball clean. Keeping my balls fresh and swinging.
Well, we should do a podcast on ball wash because to me it's just fascinating.
4th round, 1 minute and 16 seconds left. I'm calm.
Okay.
That's what Aaron says. And he knows everything. Yeah.
I like running through white people neighborhoods with my shirt off.
I'm gonna steal all your stuff. I like running through black people's neighborhoods with my shirt off. I'm gonna get all my stuff back.